They arrive in the train station in the middle of the night. Shalom was rightfully concerned about missing the connecting train. Were that to happen, Shalom Shachna would not arrive home before Passover. So Shalom Shachna decided to pay a Russian peasant to wake him up. Now the only problem was that the only seat in the entire waiting room was next to a Russian official who wore a gray uniform with so many brass buttons that Shalom Shachna took to calling him Buttons. In this subtle way, Shalom Aleichem winks to the Jewish audience and reminds them that in such a vulnerable state as ours, all we can see are the buttons, the trappings of power and not the person. No matter, Buttons was sound asleep, snoring soundly on the bench with a small space next to him. So ever so gingerly, Shalom sat on the bench, squeezing himself in so as to not wake the Russian with the buttons and the official-looking gray hat. Shalom promptly fell asleep, and a few hours later, in the middle of a complicated but utterly terrifying dream, Shalom Shachna was awakened by the peasant. Shalom Shachna was startled and dazed. He grabbed his carpet bag and reached for his hat, and he ran to the ticket counter. There he encountered an extremely long line. He began to worry. How in the world would he have time to get a ticket and board the train? But then the strangest thing happened. The people made way for Shalom Shachna. When they saw him, they got out of the way. What Shalom did not know was that he had taken the hat of the Russian official, the one with the red stripe, by accident. And now the people mistook this Jewish miskite for a person of real power. I'll let Shalom Aleichem continue the story as Shalom Shachna approaches the ticket counter. "Where to, Your Excellency?" asked the ticket agent. "What's this excellency all of a sudden?" wonders Shalom Shachna, and he rather resents it. All the same, he says, "Kastrolevka." "Which class, Your Excellency?" "Third class." "Which class?" The agent was startled. Third class for such an official? This time, Shalom Shachna was good and angry, and he decided to tell him square. "Third," he says. In short, Shalom Shachna buys his ticket, takes up his carpetbag, runs out on the platform, plunging into a crowd of Jews and Gentiles. And he goes looking for that third-class carriage. Again, the red band and the visor work like a charm. Everyone is making way for the official. Shalom Shachna is wondering, what is going on here? But he runs along the platform till he meets the conductor carrying a lantern. "Is this third class?" asked Shalom Shachna, putting one foot on the stairs and shoving his bag into the door of the compartment. "Yes, Your Excellency," says the conductor, but he holds him by the elbow. "If you please, sire, it's packed full. It's as tight as your fist. You couldn't squeeze a needle into that crowd." And he takes Shalom Shachna's carpetbag. You hear what I'm saying? He picks it up and he sings out, "Right this way, Your Excellency. I'll find you a seat." "What the devil?" cries Shalom Shachna. So he runs after the conductor with the lantern, who leads him into a second-class carriage. This too is packed to the rafters. No room even to yawn in that carriage. "This way, please, Your Excellency." And again, the conductor grabs the bag, and Shalom Shachna is racking his brains over this excellency business. They enter the first-class carriage. The conductor sets down the bag, salutes, and backs away bowing. Shalom Shachna bows right back. And there he is, alone at last. Shalom Shachna looks around to get his bearings. He has no idea why all these honors have suddenly been heaped on him. First-class salutes, Your Excellency. Maybe he's dreaming. Shalom Shachna begins to rub his forehead. And while he's passing down the corridor, glances in the mirror on the wall. It nearly knocks him over. He sees not himself, but the official with the red band. That's who it is. Curse that Russian peasant 20 times. I tell him to wake me up. I even give him a tip. And what does that dumb ox do instead? He wakes up the Russian official. And me, he leaves asleep on the bench. Tough luck, Shalom Shachna, old boy. But this year, you'll spend Passover as a ladevka, not at home. Now get a load of this. Shalom Shachna scoops up the carpet bag, rushes off once more, right back to the station, where he's sleeping on the bench. He's going to wake himself up before the locomotive, God forbid, lets out a blast and blasts his Passover to pieces. And so it was. No sooner had Shalom Shachna leaped out of the carriage with its carpet bag than the locomotive did let go with a blast. Do you hear me? One followed by another, and then good night. All on account of the hat. In a brilliant and humorous way, Shalom Aleichem is able to paint the Jewish reality of his time through the use of two hats. The hat of the Jew identifies him to the outside world as other. The Jewish hat served as a lock to most doors in Tsarist Russia. While the hat with the red stripe, that offered the key to open every door. When Shalom Shachna, the poor Jew from Kasrelevka, looked into the mirror, he couldn't recognize himself as anything other than a Jew. The thought of a Jew having a uniform with brass buttons, having a hat with a red stripe, and having power in that very fearful world was just inconceivable. How far we have come from the world of Shalom Shachna. In our day, Shalom Aleichem story would have to be reversed. If the hat with the red stripe represents power and the philosophy of a dominant culture, then the vast majority of American Jews are looking out from the other side of the mirror. We are the image of the Jew with the hat with the red stripe. Whereas Shalom Shachna knew who he was when he was in Kasrelevka, we know who we are in the Western world. We are the sophisticates. We are the writers. We are the critics, the commentators. We are on the cutting edge of American culture. We know who we are in the halls of power in the Western world, with Jews sitting in the upper echelons of Washington. Today, there are Jews who know their way around the White House the way that Jews knew their way around Kasrelevka. In the nearly 100 years since Shalom Aleichem wrote On Account of a Hat, Jews in America are far more comfortable in places like New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, much more than they would ever be in a place like Kasrelevka. Moreover, in Israel, our people have come to terms with what it means for Jews to have real military power, to have their own state, to have their own land. I do not believe that Shalom Aleichem could have ever imagined a day when Jews would be so comfortable wearing that hat with the red stripe. Nor could he imagine a time when a Jewish hat would be the one that his brethren would have trouble wearing. On Rosh Hashanah, the blasts of the shofar are meant to wake us up. On Yom Kippur, we are called upon to open our eyes and look into a very Jewish mirror. When we look into the Machzor, when we look within, do we wonder for very different reasons than Shalom Shachna if they woke up the wrong guy?